speed of an action potential. The speed of an action potential varies. Many axons have a covering of a lipid called myelin. So here we have a myelin sheath which form an insulting layer called a sheath. It's called a sheath. So every axon it have a sheath called myelin sheath around the axon. This myelin sheath has many gaps called nodes. Here we have nodes. So this is myelin sheath and this is the nodes along the length of the axon. Sodium ion and potassium ion cannot diffuse through the myelin, but they can reach the plasma membrane at these nodes. So it will causes jumping of the action potential through above the myelin sheath and causes in the node between this myelin sheath and causes the opening the channel. This allow the action potential to jump from the node to node, greatly increase the speed of impulse as it travel the length of the axon. Okay. For example, an axon that cannot cover with myelin may conduct an impulse at speed only 10 meters per second. An axon that covered with myelin, it will conduct impulse at speed of 150 meters per second. In the human body, there are neurons that have myelin and neurons that do not have myelin. Neurons with the myelin carry impulses that are associated with sharp pain. Okay, so any neurons that responsible to sharp pain it will has a myelin sheath, whereas neuron that lack of myelin carries impulse associated with dull throbbing pain. It is a dull throbbing pain. The action potential in these neurons travel much more slowly than they do in neurons with myelin. If you were to accidentally cut your finger on the cut your spine shown, which kind of the neuron will be involved in this picture? The neuron will be myelin neuron because we have a sharp pain when we put our hand in this plant. So here we have a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which is released from the axon of the motor neuron. Okay. Acetylcholine bind to receptor on the skeletal muscle, which result in sodium ion entering the muscle. This produce an action potential. The action potential travel along the muscle fiber and lead to series of events that will cause a muscle to contract. The synapse. What is the meaning of synapse? It is a small gap exists between the axon of one neuron. It is a small gap between an axon of one neuron and another dendrite of another neuron. This gap is called synapse. When an action potential reaches the end of the axon, a small sac called vesicles carrying neurotransmitter fuse with the plasma membrane and release a neurotransmitter by exocytosis. When a motor neuron synapses with the muscle cells on the previous page, as a result, neurotransmitter crosses the synapse and causes a muscle to contract. So here we have a synapse between at the end of the axon with the dendrite of another neuron. At the end of the axon here we have a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters here will cause outside of the axon by exocytosis into the dendrite and causing stimuli these neurons. Chemistry connection. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that diffuse across a synapse and bind to receptor in the dendrite of the neighboring neuron. This causes channel to open on the neighboring cell and create a new action potential. Once the neurotransmitter has been released into the synapse, it does not remain there for long. Depending on the neurotransmitter, it might simply diffuse away from the synapse to enzymes might break it down. Some neurotransmitters taken by the transport protein in the membrane of the neurons and used again. And this figure shows that a single neuron can communicate with many other neurons. Here we have a single neuron. It can communicate with multiple neurons. Okay, and this is the end of this lecture.